So, what up, by the way, YouTube? Good to see you. Hello. Wish you were here on Twitch. You could be twitch.tv/SBMTGDev. That's the only plug you'll get in the entire video, except for the Patreon one, too. Go to Patreon. But anyway, we're going to look at the last batch of chords from the old mom today. And she baked up some pretty good cookies, even though, common dump today. But we did get some choice stuff in the batch. She put some chocolate chips on a few things. So let's kind of just scroll through. And when we get to good stuff, I'll let you know that it's good. That's going to be our relationship this video. Now, Attentive Skyward is the first card of the day. 3 mana, 2 and a white for a 2/2 creature. It's a Phyrexian core with flying. And when it deals combat damage to a player or a battle, you transform up to 1 target incubator token you control. Pretty good for a Windrake in limited. We've seen a lot of strictly better Windrakes lately, but this is a lot of gravy. I think that it actually is. If you are playing even like 4 cards with 2 cards with incubator abilities in your deck, I think this is probably worth playing in limited. Just a solid little body. We like Windrakes, and any sort of upside is probably good. But let's move on. Oh no, do I really have to zoom them every single time? That's dumb. Let's move on to Completed Huntmaster here. This is 3 mana, 2 and a black for a 2/3 Phyrexian Elf Warrior. You can pay 1 and tap it and sack another creature or an artifact to incubate 3. Now, this is not standard playable. I'm not saying that at all. But the limited sort of Aristocrats archetype is coming around. It's coming around. Like, it's not so, I think it's cool. I wish we had more of a possibility to do Aristocrats in standard. But I hate that this costs mana to use. I hate that it taps to use and all that. But it's a pretty powerful little back end on the ability, and you can kind of trade like crappy little 1/1 tokens up for like 3/3s, and that could be okay. So I don't hate the guy as long as you get some value for sacking something to it. But we'll move on to Converter Beast. Let's zoom again. This is going to get old, but it's probably better than looking at ads for the entire video, right? So, Converter Beast is 4 mana, 3 and a green for a 0/1 Phyrexian Beast. When it ETBs, you incubate 5. That's a lot, but it's pretty bad, isn't it? 4 mana for a 0/1. It's really like 6 mana for a 5/6 when you think about it. You get a chump blocking body, and then the 5/5 can like actually attack or something. Maybe this is sacrifice fodder. We were just looking for sacrifice fodder. Here you go. So maybe there's a slot or two in a very specific draft deck that you're building towards, but not the strongest card in the set. Let's move on to Corrupted Conviction. This is a good card, but we have seen this card before. This is a single black mana for an instant. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a creature. Draw 2 cards. Somebody on Mythic Spoiler says that this flavor text is a reference to Sheoldred. For the good of all, those who stand against the harmony of Phyrexia must be cut down. Oh, he said the thing. It's a spell in standard. You can't cut down Sheoldred. It's got... Anyway, but yeah, apparently they're going to decapitate Sheoldred. I didn't know that happened. I haven't read the story. But yeah, it's Village Rites. And Village Rites is a pretty good magic card. So I support it. End of story. This is actually one of the better cards of the day, you know what I mean? So, not terrible. But let's move on to Enduring Bond Warden. Just a single white mana for a 0/1 human scout with backup 1. When it dies, it puts its counters on target creature you control. That's an interesting backup ability. But my favorite thing about this card is the art. It's a little bunny. It's the little bunny. And she is saying, I will be with you always. And that almost makes me cry for no reason. There's a reason, but I'm a grown man, so I shouldn't, but there's something about it that I just love forever. She's doing the Teo shield mage thing. She's casting Protego. I like that. But anyway, this is a neat little card, but I just really want to talk about the bunny in the art, and that's about it. So let's move on to Gloomfang Mauler here. This is 7 mana, 5 and 2 black for 5/5 Nightmare with Swamp Cycling 2 and backup 2. Also has Menace. So 2+1/+1 counters and Menace on a thing is actually like kind of cool as an ETB trigger. And I can see this being a nice reanimation target in limited specifically. I'm not saying anywhere outside of there, but there's actually like multiple cards in this set, and at least one of them in a lower rarity. But there are multiple cards in the set that reanimate stuff from your graveyard. And there's not a whole lot of stuff that messes around in graveyards in this set, if I'm reading correctly. So, this might be nice to swamp cycling in the early game in your draft, sort of control-y draft deck. And then later on in the game, just zap stuff and kill it to keep the board clear and stuff. And then later in the game, just reanimate it. And it's either a 7/7 menace or it helps something get through for like a lot of damage with an evasive ability. So not hard to get in your graveyard, helps get your land drops. Just a solid little limited card. I could see playing one exactly one. If I had like a couple of different reanimation spells in my deck. It's not bad. But we'll move on to Halo Charged Scav. This is 5 mana, 4 and a blue for a 4/4 Zombo. And when it enters the battlefield, each player mills 2 cards. Then you may put an instant sorcery or battle card from your graveyard on top of your library. Just put it in my hand. I hate you. It's a 5 mana 4/4, which is, solid and limited. It's basically exactly the correct rate. I'm not above, not below, And, again, maybe. Basically, this can help you recast a removal spell, and it's a decent body, so it's probably better than I'm gauging it here. Any chunky body that helps you recast a removal spell is probably worth the slot. So let's move on to Hanger Scrounger. This is one of my cards of the day. Everybody pay attention. To Hanger Scrounger, this is 3 mana, 2 and a red for a 2/1 dwarf pilot with backup 1. Whenever this creature becomes tapped, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. This is kind of neat. When I say it's one of my cards of the day, I mean for limited mostly. I have actual cards of the day, but this guy interested me a little bit because you can throw him down, back something up, and then attack with that guy and immediately, get to rummage, which I think is really cool. And then later on in the game, when this guy attacks, you get to rummage. So you might get through your library pretty quickly in a game of limited. I do not love this stat line. 3 mana for a 2/1. He's not even going to trade with other 3-drops every time, which kind of sucks. So the stat line it puts me off a good bit. Even if he's a 3/2, the stat line puts me off a good bit. He still trades with 2-drops. But I just think this is a nifty little backup ability that if you need to sift through cards to find your bomb or whatever you're trying to do, this can help you sift through multiple cards in a game pretty easily. And I don't hate that. I really don't. So I like him. But we'll move on to Icore Drinker or Icore Drinker. Depends on how you pronounce it. It's a single black mana for a 1/1 Phyrexian vampire with lifelink. And if you pay a single black and exile it from your yard, you can incubate 2, but you can only do that as a sorcery. I don't know why you can only do it as a sorcery. It's dumb that you can only do it as a sorcery, but it's pretty neat. I don't think this sees standard play, and that is as a guy who really likes stick fingers. I really like Urborg Lurgoyf. I'm always looking for, fill your graveyard with dudes kinds of decks. And this does not look so terrible. At least it's an interesting design. And if it does die, which, if it blocks, it can chump and gain you some life. That's cool. But, when it does die, it's pretty easy to... Okay, let's look at it this way. It's a 4 mana 3/3. And one of the power has lifelink. Is that how we look at it? This is also good sacrifice fodder for Aristocrats decks in limited mostly. I'm not sure how good this would be in standard, but it is decent sacrifice fodder in limited. Here's an interesting thing. There are multiple cards in this set that could go into standard Aristocrats decks that say, sacrifice a creature or an artifact, like Invasion of New Capenna is one of those. Sacrifice creature or artifact. This guy gives you a creature to sacrifice, and for a super low cost, also gives you an artifact to sacrifice. So that's kind of really cool. There's just a lot of interesting little things with this dude. I like the design a lot, but he might not be quite where he needs to be. He's not I don't know, Narcomoeba, you know what I mean? He's not one of those cards that any deck that wants to dump dudes in its yard should play. I don't know if he's quite on that level, but he's pretty cool. He is pretty cool. But let's move on to Invasion of Almacat. God, there's an invasion today? I thought we were going to get through today. I looked through the cards. I just thought there were no invasions. Let's tilt our heads to the side. Wait, can I spin this? Is there a way to... Ah, ha, 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 ha. We don't have to do that. I can be a good YouTuber. Okay. So I'll learn how... something everyone knows how it works. But Invasion of Almacat is it kind of reminds me of Disinformation Campaign, which is awesome. This is 3 mana, 1 a black and a blue for a 4 defense siege. And when it ETBs, each player mills 3 cards. Then each opponent discards a card and you draw a card. The back half, if I'm not mistaken, Scarab God's a creature. The back half is Lazotep Convert. This is a 4/4 zombie. You may have Lazotep Convert enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature card in the graveyard, except it's a 4/4 black zombie. In addition to its other types, where have I heard that before? It's on that Beetle Man. You get to Scarab God precisely one thing, but it still just kind of feels like a clone, doesn't it? In a way, right? But it's not bad. It's not a bad body. And as we've seen with Scarab God before and like Godfarer's Gift, the fact that the caps out the creature's PT at 4/4 does not mean that the card has to be bad. There's plenty of stuff this can copy in a graveyard and just be like, kind of disgusting. Olivia's a cute one. Because this has higher power at least than Olivia. That's neat. But it's not going to get through for combat damage as easily. Olivia has flying. But this has higher power than Olivia. That's not a bad call. Croxos and Cuneros or whatever the thing is. That's a lot like an Olivia. You can have it enter the battlefield as that. Again, the PT's not as high there. But it's still kind of interesting to be able to like get this guy and then technically reanimate multiple things at a time. So that's an idea. Arcane Proxy. Ooh. Yeah, all the prototypes technically. Arcane Proxy's cute. Still copy Atraxa. Yeah, you could. Yeah, that's a really good ETB trigger on Atraxa. So I don't know, this is kind of neat. It is. I'm not sure, just like with Disinformation Campaign, look, we had a lot of fun with that card when it was in standard and like budget decks, and there were ways to make it work, and it wasn't terrible, but it never really established a foothold in competitive Magic, tournament level Magic. Disinformation Campaign doesn't actually like affect the board state the turn it comes in. That can be a big problem, especially on the draw. So I'm just not sure. It also doesn't really help you in this case. That effect doesn't help you, attack the battle down. Some of the better looking battles are the ones that help you flip them. Like, there's the front half lets you more easily flip a battle. So I don't think the card is like great. We've been talking about it for too long, but I think it's neat. I think it's cool. I think it calls back to two cards that I really like. So it's not bad. Dusk Mangler. Ooh, Dusk Mangler. Dusk Mangler's pretty good. Actually, you guys know I like Dusk Mangler. Make them sack a dude and they take 4. Discard. I think that's right. It's a good reanimation target. I don't know. Those are good ideas. Those are good ideas, guys. We got to move on to actually a spoiler from a different set. This is from March of the Machines Aftermath. This will be standard legal, so keep that in mind. But we've only seen 2 cards from this, 2 cards from this set so far. One was the Kenrith Funeral. And this is Joriel, one of my just favorite characters. And good lord, this art. Like, the card is gorgeous. She's gorgeous. Like, I love this character, obviously. You've seen me freak out about Joriel before. But I don't know how much I love this card. So let's take a look at it. 4 mana, 2 a green and a blue for a 3/3 legendary human druid. At the beginning of combat on your turn, up to 1 target land you control becomes an XX green and blue bird creature token with flying, with flying and haste until end of turn, where X is the number of cards in your hand. It's still a land. Whenever a land you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. So this has some degree of inevitability. You know what this reminds me of halfway? Like super halfway? You're going to have to crane your neck to see it. But this reminds me of Moloku the Clouded Mirror. Moloku the Clouded Mirror, 5 mana legend with flying. You can pay 1, return a land you control to its owner's hand to put a 1/1 blue illusion creature token flying into play. Now, the way Moloku was used to win games a lot of the time was you would, at the end of your opponent's turn, just return almost every land you control to your own hand and then attack them for like 6 or something like that, 5 or 6. Often you'd leave counter magic up, so you get 3 illusion tokens and swing in the next turn. It was kind of like similar to oh god, what was it called? I'm so glad I can't remember the name of the card. Ulrin's Epiphany, right? The Time Walk that made 2 1/1 bird tokens. In that, right, it's snowball because the first one makes 2 and the next one makes 2 and you cast that on your next free turn. And then suddenly you're attacking for 4 and it snowballs really quickly. And this card's kind of like that too. If you have like 7, 5 to 6 lands out and you return half of them to your hand and you make 3 dudes, next turn you play a land or you play a land that turn more likely. At the end of your opponent's turn, you can return 2 or 3 more to your hand, keep up counter magic, and eventually you're just dealing 6 to your opponent every turn, right? Often, Moloku would kill you. Once you activated a Moloku, you would kill your opponent within a turn or 2 at the most, right? So I don't think that Joriel is like Moloku in that way. I don't think it's going to work that way. But the sort of grindy value over time is Pretty cool, honestly. Drawing a card just about every turn seems good, but obviously, you don't want your lands to be susceptible to removal. You really don't want that. There's a pipe dream with this card where you think, well, I'm going to have 7 cards in my hand all game, and I'm going to make a 7/7 flyer that draws a card every turn. Probably not. But if there is one thing that makes this card potentially playable, it's the idea, and I mean in standard, it's the idea that you could drop it on turn 4. Excuse me. You could drop it on turn 4 and immediately attack with a 5/5 flyer and draw a card. But that's a possibility, you know? But if your opponent has any removal up, they basically get to Stone Rain you. And you cast Hill Giant. You know, you cast 4 mana 3/3. You get to try again next turn, and that's cool. You know, maybe if there's a saving grace. If they kill enough of your lands, you won't have any cards in your hand. Or excuse me, if they kill enough of your lands, you won't be able to cast your spells. So you have a million cards in your hand, and then you're swinging with an 8/8 every turn. So maybe, but I do think this is neat. Again, the ability to basically swing up to 7 haste. It's not going to happen. It's probably going to be 6 haste at the max because you play a land, you play this, you have 6 cards in your hand. But that's only if you've been really, really conservative with playing spells that game, you know? I think it's more likely that you play this on 4 and you can swing with a 4/4 haste flyer and draw a card, which is still pretty freaking good, especially considering you did that and you still have a 3/3 off the block if you need it. So maybe this is, the more I talk myself into it, the more I talk myself into it, you know what I mean? But even when you untap on the next turn, if you start casting spells, you double spell and play a land on the next turn, you only have 2 cards in your hand, you still get a 2/2 flyer. You still maybe draw a card. Could be worse. So, and it draws you cards, so it keeps cards in your hand, theoretically at least. So, I don't know, man. Maybe I just like Joriel too much. And even when I come in not liking the card after having read it a couple of times, I end up finding a way to like it. But I could see the turn 4 value on this actually being phenomenal. I will say, if your opponent goes, they're on the play, and they play Sholdred, and you go and play Joriel, I guess you're going to feel okay about like punching them in the face for 4 or 5. That's not going to feel terrible, but you also take 2 when you draw the cards. That sucks. It sucks a little bit, but it's a cool card. It is. And the art is just incredible. But let's move on to Kitzkin Billy Rider. This is 3 mana. 2 and a white for a 1/3 Kitzkin Knight with double strike. That's all the card does other than be a Kitzkin. Kitzkin are cool. I like that we got to see a Kitzkin in this set. I really like that about this set. Sneaky summer core set in a way, because we get to go to a bunch of different planes and stuff and see what everyone's up to. So Kitzkin are cool. I like them. But we'll move on to Knight of the New Coalition. This is 4 mana, 3 and a white for a 2/2 human knight with vigilance. And when it enters the battlefield, you get another one of them, right? You get a 2/2 white and blue knight creature token with vigilance. So 4 total power, 2 guys, vigilance twice. Not great. But there are tokens-based threads in limited. There are aristocrats-based threads in limited. There's a Knights deck in draft in limited. So this sort of fills all those holes and will be a card that you'll draft every now and again. So there's Lazotep Convert. Looked at you. So let's look at Marauding Dreadship. Marauding Dreadship is next. 3 mana, 2 and a red for a 4/1 vehicle with haste. And when it enters the battlefield, you incubate 2. It crews for 2. So it can sort of crew itself for a little bit more, for 5 mana, 4/1 haste. Not as good as a lightning elemental, but you know, theoretically, what I like about this is that you can play it, probably crew it that turn with a guy you already have. And then if your board gets swept, you have a way to crew it. Like that same time, you can just save the incubator token forever until you either get swept or, you know, you get attacked down or run out of creatures or whatever, for one reason or another. And then you still have a resource over here that can crew it just about any time. So I kind of like it. I really do. And I'm not talking standard here, but like, am I? No, I'm not. It's a 1 toughness creature without trample. So like, it's just not very good. It can get chumped down and die. But even if that happens, incubate 2, you know, it's not, I don't think it's like, I honestly don't think this is god awful. I really don't, but probably won't catch me playing it in standard anytime soon. I just like that it comes with a guy to crew it, and you can even like bank that guy. You can just wait until you're out of creatures and use that guy. I think it's cool. But let's look at Marshal of Zafir next. This is for the limited Knights deck. And for, any deck that wants Knights, Commander or casual decks even. I'm serious. Marshal is a 2-mana lord. He's Azorius colors. For some reason, he's blue and white for a 2/2 human knight. Other knights you control get +1/+1. And for a blue and white and a tap, you can tap another target creature. He's blue and white because blue and white are the knights in this set, because Teferi has knights. Zafir does have knights. It's the Mirage plane. They have knights. So it's not too far off, but they did have blue knight. They had Knight of Mist. There was a blue knight. There was. In that block, in Visions, there was Knight of Mist, I think it was called. But so there's precedent for blue knights in Zafir. I'm not going to go on too long about that. It's nerd lore. But I got to say, just the 2-mana other knights you control get +1/+1 and a tap ability. Yeah, guy's great, right? Guy's pretty good. Especially, again, in limited, where these tap abilities are pretty valuable sometimes. But that 2-mana lord, what else could you want? You tell me. It's no inspiring veteran. I think that's the name of the Boros Knight. Is that right? Is that correct? I don't remember. But I think we already had a Knight's Lord at 2 mana. If we didn't, then awesome. Am I wrong? Yeah, it was Mardu Knights, inspiring veteran. Anyway, let's keep going. Let's look at Meeting of Minds. It could be okay. This is 4 mana, 3 and a blue for an instant with Convoke. Draw 2 cards. So it's the 4 mana. Here's the thing. The going rate for the last 10 years, it feels like, for drawing 2 cards at instant speed is 4 mana, and then you do something else, right? Sometimes you don't even get to do something else, but we've seen everything from Chemist's Insight all the way up to 12 other cards. It's impossible to keep the name of them straight, because we've seen a bunch of these in Standard that effectively draw 2 for 4 mana at instant speed. That's the whole thing. That's the rate. Now throw some icing on top of it, little sprinkles. And this time Convoke is the sprinkles, and I actually think that's really good. Like, again, blue is the thing that you kind of look at having Convoke abilities, and you care about it the least. You know what I mean? Like, you can't get super excited about blue Convoke because you're not playing that many creatures, but it's not unheard of. It's not unheard of to play some creatures and make this work. Ether Channeler comes into play and makes a 1/1, and suddenly you can tap those 2 guys to cast this for 2 mana. I just think anytime you cast this for 2 mana, it's good, and anytime you cast it for 1, it's like busted. So I think this is a probably fine card, honestly. Right? That's not bad. But that's really all I have to say about it. I like how they're designing these 4 mana draw 2s. They're always instant speed. A 3 mana draw 2 is sorcery speed. That's a divination. But 4 mana draw 2 at instant speed is an inspiration. That's the first card that did that. But ever since Inspiration, they're trying to find ways to put gravy on it, and it gets progressively better, and I feel pretty good about that one. But Oculus Whelp is up next. This is 4 mana, 3 and a blue for a 3/2 Phyrexian dragon with flying. As long as you control a transform permanent, Whelp has, when Whelp dies, draw a card. I mean, Snapping Drake is not as good as it used to be. Say that much in limited. I wouldn't even say that Snapping Drake was an incredible card in limited. 4 mana, 3/2 flyer. These stats. That said, controlling the transform permanent should not be super hard in this environment in limited. So draw a card is pretty tempting. It's a pretty tempting ability to slap onto a card. So I don't hate this in draft, but this is a 23rd card, right? This is one of those things that you add to your deck last if you're having trouble. But most of the time I'm trying to make cuts, and I'm just not sure this guy goes in the initial pile, right? But we'll see. He doesn't seem terrible. We'll look at Overgrown Pest next. This dude I just like because of the art. I just really do. I like the Strixhaven reference. He looks great. He's actually adorable. Probably rip your arm off, but still image. He's cute. But 3 mana, 2 and a green for a 2/2 pest. When an ETBs, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a land or double face card from among them. Put that card into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Well, in a set where like 70% of the cards are double face, this guy's going to draw you a card in your limited deck a lot of the time. Also like that he's an Overgrown Pest. He's not a 1/1, he's a 2/2. He should gain you a life when he dies, but he doesn't. Either way, I guess this is what he does instead, right? This is this is what happens when they get a little bigger. Instead of gaining life, they do something useful. So that's drawing a card is pretty good. I mean, between double-faced cards and lands, that's probably going to be, what, 70% of your freaking deck in limited, right? So, yeah, guy could be okay. Oh, another bunny. Let's move on to Placid Rotten Tail here. This is a fungus rabbit. It's a fungus rabbit. I don't know if it's sad or not, or if it's got the, whatever it's called, aspergillus, but it's a 1-mana 1/1, just a green mana for a 1/1 with vigilance. And you can pay 2 and a green and exile it from your graveyard to put 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature. Activate only as a sorcery. So it is kind of a cycle-ish a little bit, these 1-drops that do stuff out of your graveyard. And this one, I kind of have all the same things to say about, right? But this one's probably not as good in like Aristocrats decks and stuff like that. But it's still pretty good. It's still okay. Sucks you can only activate it as a sorcery. That's a little lame. But I guess the Incubate one was that way too. But this one I understand even less, especially considering how much it costs to activate. 3 mana is kind of a lot when you really get down to it. But I don't know. It's okay. It's almost worth me putting a 1-drop in my limited deck. And it may be well worth putting a 1-drop in your limited deck, especially considering there's some like +1/+1 counter interactions. It's kind of a side theme in this set, so could be. I like that they just slap vigilance on it too, so it's kind of cute. And the card itself is obviously adorable. Just, for some reason I am a little scared of it. I'm a little put off by it, but let's move on to Progenitor Exarch. It's a rare, everybody. He looks cool too, right? It does, but this is a white and then double X, so you have to pay X twice for a 1/2 Phyrexian Cat Cleric. When it enters the battlefield, incubate 3 X times. It's confusing. You can also tap it to transform an incubator token you control, which I think is really cool. I like that this is just a 1-mana 1/2 that taps to transform incubators. You don't ever have to pay double X for it, but if you pay 3 mana for it, it incubates 3 once. If you pay 5 mana for it, it incubates 3 twice. 7 mana incubates 3 times. So that, hopefully I did my math correctly. So that is not bad. It scales relatively well. That can be very good, especially in sealed, but even in draft. I feel like this environment's going to go late with people attacking into battles rather than each other's life totals and stuff. You know, it doesn't look like either there are that many like really aggressive creatures in the early drops. You know, 1 and 2 drops. There just aren't a lot of extremely aggressive cards, especially even at lower rarities. So I'm not sure how aggro this limited environment's going to be. Games look like they're going to be, you know, kind of long and grindy. And board presence. I think board presence is going to matter a ton. It already does. Board presence is basically the most important thing in a game of limited, maybe a game of Magic. But obviously, depending on how your deck is built, you might sacrifice board presence to do this, or I don't have any board presence in the first few turns in the game so that I can have all the board presence, or one huge thing I do on turn 4. And limited is more a game of board presence throughout the entire arc of the game. This is very good at not only generating board presence, scalable board presence, but it also, if your opponent and you are in this war of attrition, incubating tokens and trying to generate the best board presence, this will give you a massive mana advantage over your opponent. 2 per turn, 2 mana per turn advantage over your opponent. And I actually think it's great. There's a reason this card's rare. And that's because it's not broken in limited, but I do get the idea this is very, very good in limited. Because there's going to be a lot of incubator tokens going around, and being able to actually cast your spells, rather than, you know, oh, I can only cast this 3-drop instead of this 5-drop because I want to incubate, you know, to transform this incubator token. Not having to do that kind of math or save that kind of mana, tax yourself in that way, I think will make a big deal in limited. So I really like this dude a good bit in that format, but outside of it, I'm not sure. But I will say, one more time, even outside of that format, the scalability of a 1-drop like this might be a little bit better than it looks at first glance. So, not terrible. It really isn't. But let's look at Protocol Knight next. This is 4 mana, 3 and a blue for a 3/4 Human Knight. And when it ETBs, you tap a creature an opponent controls. Put a stun counter on that creature if you control another knight. So if you don't control another knight, it's worse than Frostlings. It's not worse than Frostlings. It's got a much better stat line than Frostlings. But if you do control another knight, this just gets great. 4 mana, 3/4, not the absolute best stat line, but it's not a Hill Giant. I've brought up Hill Giant 2 or 3 times already tonight. This isn't one of those. It instantly invalidates all those guys. Something to point out. But a 4-mana 3/4, not really much to write home about. But if you can get that stun counter, I think this is sick in terms of tempo and limited. I really do. And that's really all I have to say about it. I just think this is probably, again, if you played a 2 or 3 drop knight and it stayed on the table, this will help you alpha. Like, I really think it'll help a lot. So I like this guy. Fantastic tempo and limited. But we'll move on to Rouse Reinforcements. This is a good card. Card of the day right here. One of the cards of the day. But sadly, it's really nothing we haven't seen before. It's 2 mana, 1 and a red for a sorcery. Create 2 1/1 blue and red elemental creature tokens. It is Gather the Townsfolk, Servo Exhibition, and but really more accurately, it's Dragon Fodder. Dragon Fodder is just better. When you think about it, Dragon Fodder is better because Dragon Fodder is the exact same mana cost, the exact same speed, sorcery speed. And it creates 2 1/1 tokens, but those tokens are goblins. And I just feel like there's way more you can do with goblins than you can do with elementals. Maybe you can do some with the fact that creatures are blue and red, but we have talked a couple of times already this spoiler season about building a deck that requires you playing bodies. It needs creatures, right? But it also needs tons of instant and sorceries. And maybe the best way of doing that, to go wide and also play instants and sorceries, is to play as many of these as we can. Now, I had a whole like book-length comment that I wrote back to somebody because somebody has said, aren't instants and sorceries like the way to make tokens? And like, not really in standard, right? In standard, it's like enchantments and planeswalkers and stuff. Wedding Announcement, Fable of the Mirror Breaker, Wandering Emperor, Eternal Wanderer, and like I named like a million other cards in that comment. But there are tons and tons of non-instant and sorcery cards that do this. Most of the good cards in standard that create tokens are not instants and sorceries. We have Join the Dance. We have a couple of other things, and now we have this. And I think that if it's going to make a difference that we get a Gather the Townsfolk or Dragon Fodder or whatever, it's going to be in a deck like that, you know? I don't know, guys. I could see it seeing some play because there's almost always some role-playing place for a card like Dragon Fodder. So, again, just one of the better cards of the day. Historically, sometimes Dragon Fodder, again, has a tiny role to play. It's not a super impactful card. But somewhere, somehow, in some deck or another, in its standard tenure, cards like this will have a role in standard. And then other times they'll be like, you know, well, they're always 5 cents. So that doesn't really illustrate anything. But other times they just sit in a box forever. So we'll see what happens with Reinforcements, but it's a card that's seen play before. Storm style decks and stuff. We'll look at Rampaging Geoderm next here. This is 4 mana, 3 a red and a green, Ghoul colors for a 3/3 Dino Beast with Trample and Haste. But don't worry, it's not quite a hill giant. Whenever you attack, target attacking creature gets +1/+1 till end of turn. If it's attacking a battle, put a +1/+1 counter on it instead. There's a couple of cards we saw today that attack battles particularly well, and this is one of them. I was hoping we get a couple like these. But they look to mostly be to be limited playable. But when you really back up and look at this, it's a 4 mana, 4/4 Trample Haste. Pretty good. Like, that's not bad. Like, in standard, that's not bad. But we've got now Rampaging Raptor and Ulvenwald Oddity are both just probably better cards, really, than this. This also kind of reminds me of Thundering Raiju. Do you guys see it, right? 4 mana, 3/3 when it attacks, creature gets counter. Like, a little bit, it's got the haste, but it's just not as good as any of those cards, so it's locked out of seeing standard play, but it's not a bad limited card. It's really not a bad limited card at all. Also, this is a reason people say, is there a reason to attack battles when you could just attack your opponent's face? And I've got all kinds of stuff to say about that, but this does give you a reason, right? If it attacks a battle, you put a +1/+1 counter on it so it gets better at attacking your opponent later in the game. And I think that's cool. But we'll move on to, maybe my favorite card from the main set of the day. This is Scornblade Berserker. Just a black mana for a 0/1 human berserker with backup 1. Pay 1, sack this creature, draw a card. That's so good. Elegant, beautiful, just a single black mana. It usually comes down on turn 1 as a 1/2, but it can come down later in the game, right, as a 0/1, and then it's just sacrifice fodder. Beautiful sacrifice fodder. It can always sacrifice itself to draw a card, right? If you get it off the top of your library in the late game, it's just 2 mana to dig for another card. That's kind of cool. Put a creature in your graveyard too. This too could go kind of well in those decks that want creatures in their yard, like stick fingers and stuff. But obviously, this is an Aristocrats 1-drop right here, and I've really wanted something like this, you know, an eye twitch or a shambling gas. And this isn't either one of those, but it is interesting that this can come down a little bit later in the game, you know, starting on turn 3, 4, mid-game, right? And you can put the counter on something else and make your Graveyard Trespasser a 4/4 or something. Your Tenacious Underdog a 4/3. And that's good. And then it can sack itself to draw the card. And the Tenacious Underdog can sack itself that turn after it does damage, and then you can start getting it back, right? That doesn't seem terrible to me. There's tricks with this in Standard, and it's obviously really good with my fiance. It's great. It's really good with LSO Core, you know. I've just been waiting. I've been waiting for a 1-drop like this, for a 1-drop like this for a really freaking long time. It feels like just we've had a drought of stuff like this, and maybe I'm getting a little too excited. Maybe I just see something like this and I start freaking out. Maybe it's just Novice Occultist in, you know, different clothes. but I honestly think that this might be a key card in like Aristocrats builds. They're going to really like this. It brings your LSO Core, if you back up LSO Core, it brings LSO Core up to, you know, above cut down levels, above shock or play with fire levels, really. That can be important in certain matchups. Just ain't bad, man. Just ain't bad at all. I think this is a slick card that I like, and I think I've made that clear. So when I talk about it all night, this is the one, man. This is the one. And yeah, you can play it, back something up, sack that thing, draw a card, and then immediately sack this thing, draw a card. And all that only costs you 3 mana, and you got like multiple dice triggers maybe. Like, oh, it's so good. It's really good, dog. Yeah, the backup ability that you give the thing, everyone knows that. No one said otherwise. The backup ability you give another creature only lasts until end of turn, but they do keep the counter forever. So that's worth noting. But let's look at Seed of Hope. Another one of my favorite cards of the day, actually. I just kind of like this thing. I don't think it's super powerful, but I do like it. This is a single green mana for an instant. Mill 2 cards. You may put a permanent card from among the milled cards into your hand. You gain 2 life. That's a lot for a mana, but it's not that much, right? You have to get a permanent, so you can't get like another copy of Seed of Hope or a removal spell or something like that. So you have to get a permanent. But you also get to mill yourself 2 and gain 2. That's not terrible. I just feel like that gets you slightly deeper into the game. You play it on the end of your opponent's turn 1 or whatever. Or maybe the end of your opponent's turn 2, you go this plus cut down or like something like that. You know, might draw you a land, might draw you a planeswalker, might draw you a creature, whatever, you know, enchantment. And also the life matters. Just all this I think makes a lot of sense. It can't necessarily go in those stick fingers decks. You really don't want a whole lot of non-creature stuff in there. And the non-creature stuff you do get to play is few and far between and very precious. So I don't think that this goes in those like kind of self-mill decks, but there are going to be other decks that can take advantage of this pretty well. Whether they are Reanimator decks, Mill 2 isn't much, but you know, when I say Reanimator deck, most decks these days, there's the Atraxa Reanimator deck, which is like a hard line Reanimator deck, but like a lot of decks have Reanimator elements. They can do something with their graveyard to make sure that's not just a dead zone. You know what I mean? So, mill 2 cards. This isn't necessarily draw 2, right? But some decks can treat it like a draw 2 for 1 at instant speed and gain life. So, that's pretty good. I guess according to the flavor text, we'll never get another Rin iteration, which is a little sad. Is that all that had to happen? Rin had given everything and asked for nothing. She deserved a monument, but rest in a quiet meadow is all she would have wanted. That's very good flavor text. I like it. I do. I guess she'll grow. No, she'll grow, right? Right. It's a seed. Seed of hope. Rest in a quiet meadow. So they're planting a seed, I assume? They're literally planting a seed? So maybe she'll grow back. Something will happen. It's magic, but let's move on to Shatter the Source. This is 6 mana. It's 5 in a red for an instant with Convoke. You can choose one. It deals 6 damage to a creature, a planeswalker, or battle, or destroy target artifact. Thank God this is an instant, but still, anything with Nahiri on it just kind of has to be a little bad. I mean, if you tap 3 guys, this spell still costs 3 to play. You'll play removal in limited, but geez Louise, am I right? Anyway, let's move on to Stormclaw Rager. This is 3 mana, 1 a black and a red for a 2/2 Ogre Warrior. You can pay 1 and sacrifice another creature or artifact, put a +1/+1 counter on Rager and draw a card, activate only as a sorcery. Why? Why is it activate only as a sorcery? Why? I don't get it. Seems, how come, you know? It's already busted enough you have to pay mana for this. It is not the sacrifice outlet we've been looking for. I don't think this is the like Rakdos sack outlet that we've been looking for. 1 mana is too much. You want the outlet to be free. That's the deal. You want Woe Strider, you want Nantuko Husk, but Nantuko Husk is too powerful. A common, just way too powerful for standard. That's true of a few cards. Lightning Bolt's a common, Dev, but you know what I mean. It's not like it's a ridiculously overpowered common, but still. We don't get a free sack outlet, and that really sucks for Aristocrats. You want that really bad, but in limited, you'll take this if you're drafting up the sacrifice archetype. This is definitely like a bread and butter sort of signpost card for that deck. And it probably gets up to like, 4/4, 5/5 relatively easy, draws a bunch of cards. But you only do as a sorcery. Don't get the impression that you want to play this in standard. Activate only as a sorcery. Pay mana for it. Just, God, come on. Throw us a bone. You know what I mean? But anyway, let's look. Yeah, it doesn't say only once per turn. That's true. But mana. I pay 3 mana to use it in a turn, and like that's not all my mana, but I very likely can't really cast other spells. You know what I mean? Or I can't cast a very good one. But let's move on to Tenured Oilcaster. Something I love about this name. I guess it's from Strixhaven. So he's tenured. It's 4 mana, 3 and a black for a 2/4 Phyrexian Wizard with Menace. It gets +3/+0 as long as an opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard. Whenever Oilcaster attacks or blocks, each player mills a card. That's what the card says. I just can't get very excited about it. I really, maybe it'll be a 5/4 Menace later. Let's move on to Thunderhead Squadron. This is 6 mana, 5 and a blue for a 3/4 Human Knight with Convoke and Flying. Again, you tap 3 guys for this, you get a 3/4 flyer for 3 mana. And a 3/4 flyer for 3 is Serendipity free. That doesn't deal damage to you every turn. But you had to tap 3 guys. Like you had to sacrifice so much tempo, probably, in order to do that. In your aggro deck, I don't know if you want to take a turn off to play this guy. But, 3/4 flyer in limited. If you convoke him down to 4 mana, he's probably sort of worth the rate. So this is like one of those cards that, again, 24th card. I'm not sure that you're playing towards it, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's busted and it's common and everyone's going to be playing it for free by tapping down 6 guys. And it's just great, but looks like perfectly balanced to be just okay to me. So we'll move on to War Historian. 3 mana, 2 and a green for a 3/3 human monk with reach. And it has indestructible as long as it attacked a battle this turn. This is the other card that is good against battles. We didn't see a whole lot of those in the set. And indestructible is a heck of a deal. Also, looks great. What an awesome stance they're in over here. Just awesome. I just love anything Kamigawa, don't I? In any case. Yeah, this is not bad. 3 mana, 3/3 reach. They slapped a keyword ability on it too. Yeah. Like once it actually, like if it doesn't have a battle to attack, it can block and reach. So I don't know. It's definitely above. Well, I wouldn't say above rate, but right on rate. And you would expect a normal looking common to be below rate, but it actually probably is above rate. Honestly, the ability to attack a battle with indestructible is pretty good, I would imagine. So we'll move on to War Train Slasher. 4 mana, 3 and a red for a 4/3 Wolverine Dinosaur with Menace. That's a great creature type. Whenever War Train Slasher attacks a battle, double its power till end of turn. Oh yeah, there was one more. There it is. There's one more thing against battles. Yeah, doubling its power. Because 4 mana for an 8 power dude so long as it's attacking a battle. And they have to block it with 2 guys in that case. And there's no lightning strike in this set from what I can tell, so 3 toughness is not what you want on your 4-drop, but whatever. They got to block it with 2 guys anyway. So it's not like they can block it with 1 3-drop and trade with it, right? That ain't going to happen. So they have to block it with 2 dudes. If it has 8 power, I imagine it's taking out whatever blocks it. You know what I mean? You don't want me to flip this battle. You have got to sacrifice those 2 guys. And like, Again, in a format that looks to be a war of board presence, that's pretty good. You know? But I don't think most of these cards see too much play in Standard. But what were the cards of the day here? Let's see. Stormclaw Rager has the tiniest chance in the world. Seed of Hope. I'd say Seed of Hope is probably either the best card of the day or, you know, it's in the top 3. Let's just do our top 3. Seed of Hope. Scornblade Berserker is my personal subjective number 1. I think this card is just, I cannot wait to play this card, dude. And then Rouse Reinforcements was fine. Progenitor Exarch is interesting. Marshal of Zafir. Marauding Dreadship is interesting. Joriel, right? But it's not from this set. It's from Aftermath. But Joriel looks pretty good. Invasion of Almacat was interesting to talk about. Icore Drinker is an interesting card. Hanger Scrounger I kind of cared about, you know. But that's more or less it, yeah. So, you know, we got mostly drafty stuff, as we normally do, for the last day of preview season. But some of it looks actually kind of good. They usually save a diamond or two to throw into the rough of the last day. And we got some good ones today. So let me know how you felt about it. This is the YouTube send-off here. Twitch chat, stick with me after I say spread love and be kind, please. Because we also, if you care, and you're on YouTube watching this, we're also going to talk about the best Commander mom spoilers from today. Because there are a few cards I kind of handpicked. Because I think they look cool and I want to talk about them. But for now, we're going to wrap it up for this video. So everyone that's on YouTube right now, don't you wish you were on Twitch watching live so you could say stuff to me and I could interact with you? It'd be nice. Check out twitch.tv/SPMTGDev. I told you there was going to be no more plugs, and yet I've plugged you again. I apologize. It's just same thing that happened with your mom. But I love you guys very much. It was a great spoiler season. Let me know what cards you're excited about from today. Anything I missed. Because, you know, one time in the common and uncommon dump, I missed Felidar Sovereign. It turned out there was an infinite combo that broke Standard with that card. So you never know what I'm going to miss. Let me know if I missed a trick down here somewhere in the comment section. And like the video. Subscribe, do all the stuff. We're almost at the verge of like my favorite part of the season, top 10 sleepers, top 25 cards. I spent $5 on the set, all that stuff. So you want to be subbed for it, do that if it sounds good to you. If not, no, whatever, you know. Oh, it's free to subscribe. Just subscribe on YouTube. Why haven't you done it yet? But anyway, that's pretty much all I got for this one. So I guess I'll catch you cats later. I am Deb from The Place. Thanks. Wait a minute. Hold on. We almost forgot. Because we're still in YouTube video mode, Twitch. We got to do couch card of the video. Hold on. Let's see. Let's not look. I can't look at what I get here. Pull you out. Ooh, that's a good one, everybody. This time. We got a foil Singer the Dark Baron. Look at that. That's a commander, right? Where's my sleeves? Where's the sleeves at? There we go. Yeah, man. Foil Singer, the Dark Baron. Let's go. That's pretty good. Little 6 mana 4/4 legendary vampire noble with flying. Whenever another creature dies, put 2 +1/+1 counters on the Baron. Whenever another player loses the game, you gain life equal to that player's life total as the turn began. And it has partner in case you want to play 2 commanders. So Singer is sleeved up. What an excellent couch card of the day. That was a good one. Wonder what it's going to be for the commander video. But anyway, guys, that's actually all I have for the YouTube video. Again, Twitch chat, stick with me. Don't leave. I love you guys, and I'll catch you cats later. I'm Deb from The Place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.